welcome. I'm Steve Baker with the Great Game of Business. We'd like to welcome you and thank you for taking time to spend with us. We know that the President of the United States is making an address right now, so you'll likely be seeing us in recorded fashion. Unfortunately, you can't fix any of this in post-production. There are a couple of things we want to talk about before we begin talking about how to lead through crisis. We want to make sure you know that none of us are symptomatic and that we are following guidelines used in the White House press room. We're keeping an appropriate distance. We also have a contingency. Thanks for joining us on Zoom. Zoom has been overwhelmed over the last couple of weeks trying to keep up with demand of remote workers. So if for some reason we crash during this event, we will go to a contingency and you'll need to check your email so that we can go to our alternative site. So I'd like to welcome Jack Stack, our co-founder and CEO of SRC Holdings, for joining us, and Rich Armstrong, president of the Great Game of Business. Man, this is really interesting because over the last few weeks, we have seen so much happen in the world. So much of it has been unpredictable. We don't know where it's going next. And the word black swan keeps coming up. And I thought we could start by defining what a black swan is for everybody. Although the term itself was coined a long time ago, and in Latin, believe it or not, it was really popularized in 2001 by Nassim Nicholas Taleb in his book, Fooled by Randomness, and then again, his book, Black Swan in 2007. And basically, a black swan is defined as a rare and unpredictable event that has severe and widespread consequences. And there's another part of this you may not know, that later, when it's all over, there'll be an insistence, a widespread insistence that it could have been avoided with the benefit of hindsight. Some examples are the dot-com bubble, 9/11, the crash of the economy in 2008, even Brexit could be considered a black swan because it wiped out $2 trillion of value in the economic marketplace. Here's what we want to do today is we want to talk about, what's happening in real world situations. You guys sent in your questions. There were so many questions, in fact, that we saw them starting to fall into categories, and we will do our absolute level best to make sure that we touch on all of them. In addition, Rich and I will continue these conversations weekly on Fridays, and we'll have some other goodies for you at the end of this session. So again, welcome and thanks for participating. Let's start this way. Some of you are in dire straits. There's no question about it. Some of you are strong, but your supply chains are interrupted. You might be disrupted by mandatory shutdowns, something that we're looking at here at SRC perhaps. And some of you are so young, you've never even seen a black swan before. So it's a really incredible time to take action, but also to learn as we go. But we're in this one, this black swan, we're in it all together. So again, as we collected your responses and we looked at these similar categories, that's how we're going to kind of address them. So first of all, Jack, welcome and thanks for being here. Thank you. Really appreciate it. We've had a lot of questions around the very first steps to take in light of this crisis. What was your first step in dealing with this pandemic at SRC?
Well, very quickly, we broke this thing down into kind of levels. The first level was obviously the safety, security, health, and welfare of all our associates. That was number one. That's level number one. Level number one led to level number two, which means that you can't only take care of them internally when they're here at work. You got to be very concerned with them outside of work as well and what comes in from outside of work. So level one, level two is really all centered around health and safety. Level three is what happens? How do you run? How do you stay alive? What happens with your supply chains? What happens with your associates who, God forbid, were touched by the virus? And then we also have level four, which is, okay, if you get called today and you're told the mandatory shutdown, what are you going to do? How are you going to pay your people? The big thing is that, we don't have a future without people. Okay, we don't have a future. So we've got to get them healthy. We've got to do every preventive maintenance we possibly can. We then still got to meet our obligations to our customer at the same time. And it's a very difficult situation to be able one day worrying about the health and welfare of your people and then listening on the TV in terms of an economic stimulus package, which is going to start businesses while we're taking people out of the workplace at the same time. So we've walked a really very fine, balanced in terms of what's making the right decisions. Every day we wake up, we're guilty for one thing and we're scared to the other thing. So we broke this thing down into just 4 levels, concentrate heavy processes in terms of preventive maintenance. We're doing everything imaginable from fogging. We're listening to our people. We're very, very fortunate to have an organization that people are very innovative and creative, okay, that give us a tremendous amount of ideas. When we're vulnerable, okay, they are at their best, okay? And so we have a 9 o'clock phone call every single morning. Our phone call lasts, at the very beginning of the crisis, the phone calls lasted probably about 90 minutes after a phone call. We then took every process, every question, every fear that they might have. We met again at 1:30 to prepare for the next 9 o'clock morning phone call. That phone call went to like 58 people who then has the responsibilities of passing it through to everybody inside the organization. So we have a morning huddle, around health and safety. And that's working really well because data is moving really fast. Yesterday, we broke through on testing here in Springfield, all right? We can test, all right? We can bring our people into a safe area. We know how to go through the processes and the procedures. We work closely with our hospitals to make absolutely certain that we're always on top of the latest ideas and latest processes. But also our people are doing tremendous things internally with coming up with ways of, putting up, a plexiglass between workstations and making certain that we have the proper distance requirements and anything that they feel that they can help one another on. It's really a tremendous, it's unbelievable to see how calm everybody is in the organization, because the phone call that went on at 9 o'clock this morning, we had no questions, which is really, really rare when you're running the size of organization we have. So we have that calm down. We don't have a bow on health and safety, okay? Bows are always moving around. Bows are always loose. You retie the bows, okay, we're retiring. So that's why we will not give up on this 9 o'clock meeting. And then at the same time, we're adding to the meeting a little bit of level 1 on what is the current work conditions. I mean, every week we tell everybody what our customer order board, what our back orders are, schedules are. We've been doing this for 30 some years, and sometimes you take things for granted. So all of our process and procedures, we're kind of reiterating, saying, if you're worried about backlogs, if you're worried about workloads, here's where you can go to find the information relative to whether you're going to have a job or not, whether we're going to have a layoff or not, what's in our control, what's not necessarily in our control, all right? So that's the whole idea of how to run the operations, okay? So we have operational meetings going on where we're really trying to figure out what resources do we have in terms of people, materials in our supply chain, and then at the same time, making absolutely certain that we can meet our customers' expectation. Just for everybody's knowledge, okay, our order board through May right now is only off by about 2.5%. That's off from our original forecast, all right? So that's kind of a comforting factor to our organizations. Okay, I don't know if it's going to continue, but as of today, you can go in there and you can say our order board our people believe that the order board is strong through May. And then we teach them where they can go, obviously, to get that. The fourth one is hard, the shutdown, okay? So here's what we're doing in terms of the shutdown. Think about it as a 3-legged stool. What we're trying to do is put a compensation package together in terms of if in fact we're mandatorily shut down, or if we're shut down because of a demand situation or a supply situation, that we have some kind of supplemental pay for our people, all right? The degree of supplemental pay is probably going to be based on each one of these legs of the stool. One is there will be state aid, okay, somewhere, whether it's unemployment compensation, short-term disability, maybe you got business interruption insurance. So we have one person that's working on that leg of the stool, and that leg is changing because states are trying to figure out how to cover their unemployment compensation pools. Do they have enough money? Will they dry out? Will they get help from the government? So we got somebody focusing on state aid, all right? The third thing is the federal aid, all right? So we have one person on that second leg of the stool concentrating on what federal aid will our people be able to get. Will it be $2,000 per employee? Will it be $1,200 per employee? By the size of our organization, then let's just round it off at about 2,000 people. And if they were all to get $1,000, okay, you got $2 million that would come in for that leg. Okay, if you get $300 a week on unemployment compensation from the state and you multiply by the number of people, That's the leg of the stool. The third leg of the stool is what we're going to take out of treasury. All right, so we will then decide what we're going to take out of our cash balances, what we're going to take out of money market accounts, what we're going to take out relative to debt capacities that we have, because we like our people. We want our people to make absolutely certain while they're abiding to the guidelines of making certain that everybody's healthy, they're going to be financially healthy at the same time. So we're looking at this thing and we're going to have a compensation program, but the problem with the compensation program is getting the federal people to really kind of give us an indication in terms of what it's going to be. And then the state people tell us what it's going to be. And then we will then have the challenge to determine how long do we expect this to go, right? And all I can tell you right now is how long do we expect it to go? It's not scientific, it's not quantifiable. It's the fact is that we digest a lot of data, okay? I mean, we were up at like 5 a.m, we're listening to as much data, we're in our cars listening to Sirius, we're listening to data from our customers, from our hospitalizations. I mean, we have full coverage from our people. You digest as much data as you possibly can, and then you finally come up with an answer because you gotta get off the pot. You gotta make a decision if you're gonna build a scenario or you're gonna build a model in terms of just how far you can go. So we are at the point right now of building models and anticipating this thing to go 8 to 13 weeks. Now, please don't quote this, okay? This is our models. It's based on our communities. It's based on our state. It's based on the whole 50 states of the union, okay? The information that we're getting, the markets that we're in, the processing, okay? So we're looking at how far that stool, that's a bad phrase, okay? But how far that, probably appropriate phrase, will go in order to make certain that we're taking care of our people.
So you're literally taking what's happening out there as far as packages from state and federal. As soon as that can be quantified, you can add that to SRC's own internal plan to actually stretch it out further to cover people should this go longer.
Yeah, and we're very fortunate to have really kind of literate people where they can really understand them when we say to them, hey, listen, if you get $1,200 per person inside your house, you know, that's $2,400 in a married couple that you really need to be able to save during this economic period of time. We're more than happy to supplement, okay? Don't come back to us, please, and say, oh no, this is my money. Yeah. You know, I demand more from everybody else inside the organization. You know, we're vulnerable together. So we were trying to figure out how to make absolutely certain that their take-home pay is as close to what they're accustomed to using without totally becoming insolvent, all right? And so we built certain solvency levels inside of our organization. What's a solvency level? Okay, to us is like, we look at earnings, we look at depreciation, we figure out what our profits are in terms of those combinations. And then we know today's market, you can borrow almost 4 times what your annual earnings are. So let's say it's a 4-to-1 leverage ratio, right? We know things are gonna change. So then we apply a 6-to-1 ratio in terms of when we think we can come back, okay? So we're working all kinds of situations that we can extend this thing as long as 8 to 13 weeks in order to make certain that everybody doesn't see a significant hit to their income.
So you're really taking uncertainty out as much as you possibly can, which is difficult in a situation where you have so much uncertainty coming at you every day from internet, TV, all the different media.
Let me tell you something, the farther out we get with this thing, okay, the more our people are gonna really understand how they basically can get through with it. I mean, we're at a point right now where we're even telling some of our people, if we go into a supplemental pay program or our people are working from home, we wanna make absolutely certain that we have educational tools that people are gonna be taking home to their families, okay? You know, we're using a lot of the stuff in the Great Game of Business, what you've been giving us in terms of education on literacy and profit and loss statements and, you know, how to truly understand the business. Books you've been writing, we're saying that if, in fact, we're shut down, we want you at least spend 1 or 2 hours a day learning business. So we're really going into a lot of depth in terms of trying to how to handle this emergency shutdown situation. And it's coming so fast. 20 minutes ago, I heard that New York just basically only essential businesses are going to be open and they've closed everything else down. So we got to be ready.
Got to be ready, yeah, for sure. Rich, you know, we read a lot of different questions on this from the community. Would you talk about the most effective way, listening to those questions about how to deal with uncertainty and morale, kind of playing off of what Jack has talked about?
Yeah, I think a bit of it is exactly what Jack has talked about, is just over communicate, the bottom line, what I've seen, what SRC is doing and a lot of our practitioners is taking opportunities to set up the communication rhythm and keep consistent with that communication rhythm and answer the questions that they have. And Jack talked about, the first, calls that we had in this process, there certainly was a lot of questions. And now over time, people are getting their questions answered and now able to communicate that down to their organizations. And so I think all of that just, has a way of calming everybody down so they can start to think creatively of how they're going to, deal with the situations.
Yeah, in a world of chaos, it's nice to know that work is one place we can get some steady, good information and count on that. It should be one place we can win. Jack, here's a bit of a follow-up. What about companies that are dealing with lost orders, like retail and restaurants?
Yeah,
What should they be doing right now? You're already in the retail business and the training and coaching business. What should companies do?
Well, let's not talk about your business. I'll talk about some of the other small businesses that are probably more personal to me. Okay,
Sure.
They are very, very small family-run businesses that have been basically shut down. Retail, whether it's in the clothing industry or whether it's in the toy industry, my kids have got small businesses that are basically shut down. All right, and we're working with those businesses as well as we're working with the big businesses that we try to tell them some of the things they really need to do. Okay, so that's pretty much a lot of the questions. What do I need to do if I don't have orders? Okay, and so the thing that I'm trying to teach them is this. Okay. First thing you really do is go after your liabilities, all right? Take your liabilities, take your notes, take your bills, okay? And immediately contact those people that you have to pay and tell them that you can't pay. Don't hesitate. Be the first ones out there. Tell the person that's got your rent or the person on a mortgage is changed. I noticed the bank market today is giving forbearance on some mortgages, not forbearance, but they're leaning, they're giving grace periods, okay?
Okay.
So the first thing you do is go after liabilities. Right? Go after those things that are scaring you, whether it's vendors, okay, or whether it's the payroll taxes or something that I don't think we may get a break on payroll taxes. Okay, we may get holidays, we may get push-ups. But pay attention to your liabilities. Okay. Call people up and tell them that listen, I'm not necessarily going to default. Okay, but can we stop until a certain point of time, and we'll be more than happy to just adjust and get back in the marketplace. One of the things that one of the small businesses told me last night, and I'm just absolutely floored with the comment. They put out a video yesterday talking about the vulnerabilities of their store, the vulnerabilities of retail, the vulnerabilities of what are you going to do with your associates that have been with you for 15 years that you now have to sit there and say, I don't have enough money to pay you, okay?
Right.
And she went online and it caught a lot of attention, and it was actually posted in terms of one of the newscasts here. But the point that she was trying to make, and this is a point that I think all of us, big or small, really need to understand, is that she said that people are the most favorable and the most understandable and at their greatest when they know someone's vulnerable. Because the response that she got by putting out this piece came from customers, came from her associates. And when I think about this, I think it's really true that what happens is that when we have enough tough situation and we share the pain, and this is what's critical about this open book, okay, is to have the courage to tell people just how bad it is, okay, in hopes that they will understand the vulnerability. And then what you will see inside your organization is new ideas, how to best utilize the assets that we have inside of the company. Maybe this toy store now figures out how to be able to do online. Maybe they know Easter's coming up, so they'll be packaging things that they have never done before. Okay, the inspirations will come from people inside your organizations. I mean, I think innovation, creativity, entrepreneurship comes when you're in trouble, okay, not necessarily when you're really, really doing well, okay? So if you're running an operation right now and you're afraid of telling people really things that you don't know, you're missing such an unbelievable opportunity to grab a resource, okay? But also, you're teaching them, okay? You're teaching them about reality. You're teaching them about life. And it isn't all about decision-making made at the top. It's trying to figure out how to get any participation for everybody you got inside your organization. So these small businesses really got to be able to go after and attack their liabilities, okay? And I don't care if you have people that are sitting at home, okay, that are out of work, okay? You can be asking them to help you, saying, hey, would you mind negotiating this one particular piece for me? Take little aspects of your liabilities and go out there and set a task, moving them till 13 weeks out or 15 weeks out or something of that nature. And then is obviously maximize what assets you have. If you got cash assets, okay, if you got receivable assets, please keep people on top of your receivables, all right? Stay on top of what receivables that you have, put somebody on it right away, okay, and make certain that they're dogmatic in terms of, because, receivables are gonna go out, they're gonna go further out, you're gonna be counting on those receivables. The quality of the information that you have relative to the revenues that you got coming back inside your organization is what you're gonna be using in order to be able to figure out how you allocate what assets you have to your people. And obviously the most important asset that you can get is cash. And so what you really want to do is to be able to figure out, if I do get cash, what's my next move? What's my next step? Is it going to be in salaries? Is it going to be in inventories? Or is it going to be? And then at the same time, the hardest thing is the bounce back, okay? I mean, what am I going to do when we have an upturn?
Right.
And there will be an upturn. And so you got to just keep in the back of your mind is that what kind of reserves do I have? And how far can I go from a solvency standpoint to make absolutely certain that I got a bounce, I can get back? Extend your line of credits, call your credit card companies. I'll tell you right now, Chase is charging an extraordinary amount relative to their credit cards, okay? I mean, if you were delinquent at all in a retail operation with that kind of a credit card, all right, they're not backing off the interest rates, right? But I'll tell you one thing, I've talked to several small businesses, American Express, okay, is becoming more tolerant, more lenient. Is that a brilliant strategy for American Express?
Yeah, they'll
To be able to pick a lot of
Yeah.
market share to be able to help someone that's vulnerable? Okay, so understand that people are really, really receptive, they're positive, and it's not a bad thing to talk to people and explain to them what the situation is, and then you'll get a tremendous amount of rebounds of their ideas, their suggestions, their revenue producing ideas, okay? And that's what this game is all about, is to teach people how to create revenue producing products and ideas. And I think a whole new generation of new business is going to come out of this in just a relatively few weeks.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. As we think about people who are saying, okay, I go after my liabilities, I talk to my banker, I extend the terms that I'm paying to my vendors, all those different things are great immediate actions. A lot of people have been asking this question, should I change my critical number in these crazy times? So do they abandon their plan? Do they establish a new 90-day critical number? How would you talk to folks about their critical number right now?
I read that question, okay, and I think it was a great question. And then I kept thinking about this a lot. I'll just tell you right now, our most critical number is health and safety. Okay, I mean, that's our 9 o'clock call.
People first.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that is our critical number. Okay, did we change our critical number because of health and safety? Not really, because health and safety has always been number one. I mean, any meeting we start, it's always either about safety or it's about health. So, but what has been so rewarding is how that phone call, okay, yes, a phone call, and I'm from the pencil era and the rotary phone era, okay, I really do believe that phone calls work really well.
You're referring to your 9 a.m.
My
phone
9
call.
a.m. call on health and safety. It has calmed down this organization like you wouldn't believe. They are tremendously calmed down. They know that we're doing everything we possibly can to push this thing as far away as we possibly can. And that we will always be reactive if something happens, all right? So we were able to calm them down. That was a huddle, okay?
Yep.
I mean, don't sit here and just don't think you can have other huddles or you should eliminate your huddles. I mean, this is your communication channel, all right? So are we gonna change our critical number in terms of organizations? No, we're not, okay? Why would we? Okay, I personally think what'll happen from our standpoint is that you better get ready for the fourth quarter. If you listen to some of the pundits in terms of that they're willing to forecast how they perceive the economy to be, they're expecting a tremendously big spike in the fourth quarter, okay? Now, what does that mean? Well, you're gonna have a big spike in the shortest number of labor hours you possibly can at any quarter that you have, right? So are there some things that you can pull out of that fourth quarter and you can start spreading into this thing, getting ready for, a big comeback, okay? So you've gotta be concerned about the upturn. You've gotta be thinking about the upturn as much as you're thinking about what's happening in terms of the businesses that you're running at the present time, as well as in the contingencies if in fact you're in a shutdown mode. So juggling a lot of balls. So losing your huddles and losing your communications is foolish at this particular point in time. I mean, you want to keep your patterns, you want to keep your routines. You don't want to send any kind of fear inside your organization, and you want to eliminate the fear.
That's great. So Rich, could you take that for a minute and talk about, I know you've talked to a lot of businesses, small to mid-sized businesses, about critical number. Can you talk about, should I just throw the plan out the window? Do I keep the plan but have a 90-day thing? I think that Jack has given us a perspective that we can really take in. I'd like to hear what you think about it as well.
Yeah, I think what Jack said is right in terms of right now it's health and safety, but we're in pretty good shape right now with SRC in terms of our orders, as Jack talked about. There's other practitioners we've talked to that are not in that shape. And obviously what it comes down to is that probably on a short-term basis, you are focused entirely on cash. So I'd look at it as that you don't want to throw your plan out the window. The plan is the targets. That's where you're shooting. And hopefully we have an upside that we can take advantage of in the fourth quarter. But you may need to put together a 90-day plan with a critical number like cash, or there may be some other challenges you had. We had a practitioner that called in and said that basically they've set their 90-day plan and it's revenue, but he's told everybody that it's $90,000 of revenue. Okay, that's what will allow us to sustain the jobs, sustain the activities, cover the overhead of the business, and be able to continue the next 90 days. $90,000 of revenue per month. That's the kind of thinking that they need to be looking at and thinking about at this point in time.
So a tremendous amount of courage. I love the idea of taking fear out of the organization, over-communicating with folks so they can understand this is a good, safe place. We're going to be taken care of, but now we need to activate. I heard someone in the community talk about when you create that safe space, you actually get more creativity because people aren't worried about, do I have toilet paper and a loaf of bread? It's what can I do to help? And I love that there's so much courage behind the idea of we need 90 grand just to keep the doors open. So that will really get us focused. And yet it doesn't take our eye off the bigger critical number that we've set. So we don't abandon the plan. What we do is say every play between now and the end of the year changes how we get to plan.
That's right.
I think you guys are absolutely right, but this thing is like a continuous movement, okay? So you have a critical number and then you have variances and deviations to that critical number. It's the variance and deviations to the critical number then that what leadership gets on, what leadership works for. For instance, if we have one of our facilities, for instance, that does not have enough work, and we have another facility now that's dealing in the agricultural section of our economy, and they need people, okay, we can see by having at least a critical number, at least a standard, okay, in terms of what's going down, what's going right, what needs to be fixed. So what we've done this week is we've established one person that allocates people between organizations. Those people that are more than willing to go from one side of town to the other side of town in order to be able to get work. And so you need a standard. You need the highest, weakest point in your company, which is a critical number. And then when things begin to fall, that's how you have a priority in terms of what needs to be fixed, okay? And that's what a lot of people don't understand, and they just don't have plans and they don't have critical numbers, all right? I mean, you want to be working on where the fire is at, okay? I mean, and put it out as quickly as you possibly can. And people respond to that. People respond that if you have that direction, if 90,000 is 90,000, listen, don't go after 90,000. People are incredibly creative, all right? You have to trust them to be able to be part of the solution. That's the key to open book management.
Yeah.
Love it.
Steve, I'd like to just add, Jack talked about keeping discipline to the huddles. And I think there was a question that was brought out is that do I cancel my huddles? I think this is the most important time to stay disciplined to that those practices, especially the communication of your huddles, to keep people informed on the state of the business, those types of things, to keep people focused on the critical number. I know that I think there was a coach that talked about that he just attended a huddle of about 200 people in 6 different operations. They did it completely virtual. So there's technology. There's a lot of ways that you can still make it happen if you need to on that huddle. What we've done at SRC, obviously, that we're trying to keep all of our meetings to 10 or less. So what do we do about that? We can't have all team huddles.
Right.
But what we've done is double down on those team huddles, the departmental huddles, those pre-huddles. And, you know, I got a message from Chrissy the other day that said that, you know, it was great that we put so much emphasis on really boosting up those team and departmental huddles and getting the supervisors ready to lead those huddles because they're coming into play right now. They're the communicators right now. That's where the information is going through. That's what's keeping people excited about what we can do to keep the business going forward.
Then you're talking about Chrissy Schell, our head of talent and organizational development, and the investments that have been made in making sure that we're huddling in all levels of the business, not just the top.
So I really encourage the practitioners that and the attendees we have is that think about those other communications. You can do small huddles, team huddles, get the big communication out and do most of the communication in those small team and departmental huddles.
I you guys are right on. I don't think it's a matter of what if, okay? You know, but I think what it is, it's a matter of, and I don't want any of the viewers to think that our huddles is still everybody coming into one room, okay? They are degrees of separation, significant degrees of separation, okay? And that's just one of the challenges and that you need to be able to overcome, okay? So we start out at 9 o'clock, we hit 58 people. You know, if 58 people actually each only take 2 or 3 people, when 2 or 3 people take it, it gets, the most important thing, and this is something to remember, it's a consistency of a message in a fluid market, okay? And that is like an oxymoron, okay?
That's like a North Star.
It is terrible, and because there is fluidity. That's why instead of a weekly huddle, now we're almost having it at 9 o'clock. Now the 9 o'clock meeting this morning ended at 9:31, okay? Because we got all the relevant data relative to health and safety. We got all the relative data relative to where we are in terms of the $90,000. And then what we told them that we were waiting for and listening for are the solutions relative to what to do if we have a shutdown. Okay, so that is like a repeatable pattern. We think we see tremendous differences in cultures and behaviors when we have continuous patterns, okay? People will know that they will be changing. You know, a week ago, we didn't have testing. Everybody was screaming about the testing. We then went and expedited with our hospitals the testing. The testing has been in effect. Once they hear they get that type of information, the comfort factor, the question goes down, and we move on to the next challenge, okay? So that consistency of a concise message, okay, is just absolutely it works miracles.
Yeah, that's really interesting because good times or bad, we say that you should keep your huddles up. As an example, that rhythm, that communication, that consistency. And Jack, through the years, I've repeated a quote I heard from you over and over again about the difference between players and champions. You know what I'm talking about?
No.
So the champions have learned to train through the boredom.
There's got to be a little levity here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Somehow.
But I think that's
Respectful levity.
Exactly. And that's what everyone out there knows me for.
Yeah, and you listening to me and I listening to you is, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I know.
I think we got to spend more time. You guys spend more time. Go ahead.
Well, I think it's important because as we travel around the country and we share that Jack Stackism of the difference between players and champions is that champions have learned to train through the boredom. It's more important now than ever. But when this is over, people will be like, whew, well, we got through that, thank goodness. And we will, they'll get busy. We got too busy to have the huddle. When I read one of the questions that said we've stopped having our huddle weekly, it just stopped me in my tracks. So what would your advice be? I think you gave it already, but just to punctuate it, could you talk about the importance of that weekly huddle?
Well, let me see if I can address 3 of the questions at one time, all right? And in our critical number is retention, okay? We were in a labor-intensive market, and I've been working on retention, as you well know, for the last, many of you that follow us for the last 2 years, okay? We've been doing some extraordinary things because we feel that whoever has a dominant workforce by 2021, 2022 will dominate the marketplace, okay? So we also came to the conclusion that over the last 36 months, after the last 3 years, that 40% of our employees are brand new, right? They're just brand new.
40%.
40%. And then that number holds true in a lot of different organizations, okay? And what everyone knows is retention, okay, because the availability of jobs prior to the crisis has been one of the most significant problems that we had in terms of limiting the growth that we had in relative to our economy. So we can't lose track of really what it was, okay, that we were working on, right? And what's ironic for us is that retention now is probably a big advantage in a crisis to be able to now teach people that 40% that have never been through this before, okay, that where your cultures are put to test, where your values are put to test, okay, whether if you're saying that jobs are number one, they will now see that jobs are number one. I mean, this is our 5th trip to the Black Swan, okay? I mean, this is our 5th trip. And typically what we've seen in the past, okay, is after it's over, people are tremendously grateful. I mean, they're just grateful and, you know, they're so respondent. And that'll go on for about 3 to 5 years, and then something will change, and then people will sit down and forget about the fact that you didn't lay them off during this time.
Right.
And you know, we had down in Springfield, we had the big crisis of the Springfield, or the whole television community collapsing, because Zenith was the biggest producer here, okay? In that crisis, when we brought people back, they stayed with us because we never laid anybody off, and they got bigger job offerings from somebody else, okay? But it was because of what culture that we, and what values that we had inside of the company that we were able then to build a workforce that took us 10 years. Now here we fast forward, we're 10 years later, 40% is new, 60%. And so now it's more important to be able to figure out how to be able to teach, how to be able to lead, how to be able to communicate, how to build your teamwork, all right? And then obviously you're gonna be surprised at the champions and the entrepreneurs and the innovators and the creators are gonna come out of your organization. I've always erred on the side that I believe growth comes when you don't have resources, okay? And growth comes when you have extraordinary people.
Right. So the mother of invention is necessity. Is that the quote?
And you know, you might want to put that together, put your name on it. That's pretty good. That's a good quote.
I think I stole that from Edison.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah. Let's just go with Steve Baker. Yeah. So listen, you answered a lot of questions about financials earlier and about dealing with banks and lenders and that sort of thing. Somebody asked a question, this is word for word, how much debt would you absorb just to hang on to your employees?
We will estimate what we think our earnings are coming back, and we will assume that we could get 6 times that amount in a loan. So if we think we're gonna make $100,000, we would figure that the leverage would allow us to borrow at least $600,000 at the worst case scenario in terms of debt. That does not add to any cash that you might have, okay? But we're willing to go down to a 6 to 1, $6 worth of debt to $1 worth of earnings. That's our leverage ratio right now, and those are the models that we're working with, okay?
That's worst case scenario.
Well, like right now, right now it's in the marketplace, it was 4 to 1 in most cases, okay? Most businesses could get loans up to about 4 times their earnings and depreciation. So you use it and then you figure, okay, things are gonna get worse, they're probably gonna ease up credit, okay? So you have to go down to a point of solvency, and you have to decide what solvency is, and we've decided that it's, you know, how much debt, you know, it's just the worst case scenario, okay? This is really the worst case scenario. How much debt can you get, okay, relative to the earnings that you have? So you really need your people to tell you, what do we think earnings are gonna be under a second quarter rise, a third quarter rise, a fourth quarter spike, okay? This is why that whole high involvement strategy, high involvement planning is so critical, all right? So you can be able to get those parameters so you do have the ability to bounce, okay? Right. So we could probably go, and we're pretty well, our liquidity is really good right now. We've done a lot of really good things because of the game, okay? And we've been very blessed because of the people we have, okay? So our liquidity is really strong, all right? We don't have to use debt right now, okay, to go to stay the course, okay? Right. That's kind of a bad statement when you heard some people say this could go 18 months. Okay, we cannot go 18 months, obviously, okay?
Right.
But we can go a period of time. So our models is that we will figure out what is our earnings going to be at a specific point in time, 30 days, 60 days, 365 days, and then we will assume that we can borrow at that particular thing. Now, I know there's probably a lot of really brilliant CPAs and accountants out there, and God bless you, okay, and I know you're gonna tell me that, well, what about this and what about that? In our businesses, and as fast as we gotta move, we gotta throw out all these different types of exceptions. We process data. This is not empirical, okay? We process it and then it becomes a gut reaction and we go with a formula. So our formula is, we think that we can go down to about a 6-to-1 ratio, which means we can borrow a lot of money if we can sustain our earnings.
No, thanks for that. So if we take that, that's SRC's perspective, and I like the way you put it is we've got to figure out our formula, and other folks will have to figure out theirs. To a smaller company who may not have the liquidity and the solvency that SRC does.
You're going to learn so much if you work your liabilities. You're going to work so much if you work your notes, okay? And you go ask for the moon, all right? I mean, if you've got a bank note, okay, and you go to your banker now and you ask them to push out principal payments or reductions in terms of interest rates, okay? I mean, it's better to go to them now than it is when you have to go to them when it's really, really bad, because the degrees of difficulty are going to get tougher, and the demand for this is, and the attention of the banking industries and the mortgage industries and the SBA loans, okay, the lead times are going to get longer and longer and longer, okay? So the quicker you react to protect, okay, your cash flow, which you do that by understanding each one about your liabilities, in the end, when you come back, it's going to make you stronger, okay?
Right.
I mean, you're going to maybe find some vendors, okay, that are going to give you 90 days, that are going to give you 120 days, okay? And if you come back and you're on COD or you're on 30 days, okay, you're going to sit there and go, oh my God, you know, this is going to give me capacity, okay? My payables can be stretched out, which has never been happened before. I mean, this is the time to go in there and negotiate some of those best business practices that you want, that you wanted to get changed when things were going good, okay? Right, so learn from those, okay? And then you'll at least have a grasp of them. You're probably gonna have to do your cash flow statements in terms of, maybe I've seen some of our associates, small businesses have cash flow statements around their entire conference room. What was gonna be paid every day, what was gonna be paid every minute, what was gonna be paid every month, okay? And then what was coming in from the people that were creating the ideas. And boy, I'll tell you, you couldn't believe the sense of, I don't know, I'm probably crazy, but sometimes I think I like it when it's more difficult. I mean, I think I've always been a person that likes to come from behind, and I don't know how to win with the lead. It's my problem, okay? Well, I'm sick. I really like the challenges, okay? And I don't look at it as the end of the earth, okay? I mean, you've got to understand the power of the people that you have working around you, and you have to believe in them. And if you believe in them, you're going to be absolutely surprised what's going to happen to you when you get out of this.
And Rich and I always say it begins with the right leadership, you know, based on your original idea and then putting it into a methodology. I think this is really cool because, you know, your, how can I say it, that your, you know, vibe that you put out is coming from a place of strength and of confidence and positivity, rather than, it was realism though, right? You know, this is bad, but we can do this because we're more engaged and smarter, we can dominate, that sort of thing. Is it important for leaders to come through with their most, I'll say two things, confident but authentic selves?
I wake up in the morning scared to death every morning, okay? So it's not,
Well, there goes my vision of
don't think that we got
this webinar is over.
Don't think we got answers to these challenges, okay? But what we do have is an insatiable appetite for information.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's what we try to encourage in the great game of business, okay? Is to have everybody have that insatiable appetite. Forget the dumb questions, okay? Remember the little business owner that said, you know, people will respond when you're the most vulnerable, okay? Which is really kind of interesting, because when you're going to make a decision, too many times you make the decision for the 5% of the people that are negative. Right. Okay, you forget the 95% of the people that are really positive, that will work as hard as you want them to work or help you through some of the most ridiculous times that we experience. Okay, so if you miss that 95%, okay, and you're doing everything to focus in on the people that are really going to be negative, regardless of what you do, all right, you're going to have time. But the only way you can capture that 95% is you got to make a decision, okay? And you can process all this data. I mean, you can try to make it as empirical. You can try to make it as quantitative. You can try to back it up with economic experience. But I'm going to tell you, the more data you have, the stronger your gut's going to be. And at the end of the day, something like this, I mean, if you have an understanding of at least the parameters of financials and businesses, you have the outer scope, and you stay in the inside of this thing, you then make decisions, okay? How can I make a decision on do the financial scenarios for 8 to 13 weeks, okay? We're saturated with knowledge, okay? What's happening in China? The disease started in January. Yesterday, we heard that Starbucks actually put up a business where it started, okay? How many weeks is that? January, February, March, okay? That's 10 weeks, okay? That's falling in line with my 8 to 13. I mean, you draw information here, you draw information there. You process, you saturate yourself with the data. You get it from your people in the organization. You say, okay, let's see how long pay can last over a period of time. That's how you process it. If you sit there and become paralyzed and sit there and go, oh man, I got to substantiate this. I got to have all the backups in place in terms of making these types of decisions on a crisis period of time. Your people are going to see that. Yeah. And you want your people to be making strong decisions about what's going on in their houses, what's going on in their education systems, okay, what they're doing in terms of helping other people's in terms of their community. So you gotta be able to figure out how to create that strength, even if you're wrong. Yeah. Okay.
Action
but
cures fear.
Boy, if you're wrong, fix it. As fast as you can. If you got the deviation, the variance, have the process to be able to fix the variance and deviations. I mean, I often thought leaders are not about establishing standards. Leaders are about having the capabilities of having plans in place when you don't meet the plan. Right. So,
along those lines, could we talk just for a minute about contingency planning?
Yeah.
We've been doing that for years. You came up with it so long ago. It's second nature to you. When we talk about it out in the community, a lot of people who are beginning their journey on Great Game, they aren't even close to it yet, but now's a great time to be thinking. Could you just touch on what is contingency planning and how it works at SRC? And then Rich, I'd like you to follow up with, how we teach it out in the community.
Okay, now this goes back to your black swan theory. I mean, after you've dotted every I and crossed every T, and you think that you have got everything figured out inside your company. And even if you go to your salespeople and say, if this sales plan doesn't work, what are we going to do? Because people's lives are at stake. After you've run all the traps, okay, you got to set that aside and say, okay, now what's going to be unexpected? What is going to happen? Okay. For a long period of time, the last 10 years, okay, we've been saving money. We've been saving cash. It wasn't less than 2 months ago, I was reading the mood of the country was cash was trash.
Cash was trash.
It was trash. That if you have cash in your balance sheet, it is the worst thing you can do, whether you're a big company or a small company, that you have to be able to put your cash into play. The other thing was borrow as much as you possibly can because it's a low interest rate, okay? And how can you get hurt? And it's never been as low as what it is. And it's good. Just borrow as much as you possibly can. What could possibly happen, all right? When you get into those kind of situations, that's contingency number 2, okay? That's when you sit there and you say to yourself, this is insane, okay? This is wrong. Something bad is gonna happen. Now what you do is you figure out what's bad is gonna happen. And while people are telling you to take your cash off the balance sheet and give it out in dividends or give it out in buying back stocks or giving it out in terms of compensation to associates or something of that nature, you got to sit there and say to yourself, when you don't have anything less, what are you going to do? And you've got to institute those echoes in the back of your head that's sitting there saying, I don't have it figured out and I'll never really have it figured out, okay? But I do need a trapdoor. I always believed in contingencies and trapdoors. I looked at everybody's plans and I said, okay, what happens if you don't make this plan? And they look at you like, what do you want me to say? And you go, no, I don't want you to say something. I want you to tell us what is the movement, what is the act, what is the business we're going to be in, what is the markets that we're going to be in. Okay, I want you to think differently because we have people in our stores, we have people in our shop floors whose lives depend on this kind of stuff.
Right.
Okay, so the more you can get into a trap, the more you can get a backup plan, the more you get a contingency. And I'm telling you, this is crazy for me to tell you this. Okay. But we looked at markets that we were in. We're predominant in transportation, that we had to diversify. So we got into on-highway versus off-highway, and then we got into marine, and then we got into, hey, we're heavy in the agriculture business, right? How ironic that if we forced to shut down now, we're in a business that they call essential. I hate it when they use these things like essential, all right? So now we have one big portion of our business because of our diversification program, because of our trapdoors, because we're saying what if, and we're saying this, what if we had a black swan? We've had two industries that they probably will not shut down, okay?
Which are agriculture.
Which is the agriculture side and the defense side, because we do a lot of defense business as well. So those two things are going to be pumping at least some revenues back into the company that we could use in order to be able to pay the people that are off if they're non-essential type business. This is crazy thinking, okay, but it works, okay?
But that crazy thinking you say is the crazy smart, right?
And it takes a long time to figure out that you were smart, okay? I mean, we went 10 years for this recession, but we knew there was a recession.
Right.
Okay, we just didn't know it was gonna be like this, but we are prepared for it.
And we're going to talk about that more in a moment, but I do want Rich, if you don't mind, to share with us a little bit about how contingency planning works, because I think the viewing audience has got to be thinking about, I don't have time to think about that now. Now's the time we should be kind of at least making some notes, right? I mean, what would you advise?
Even some of the companies that, out there that are maybe doing well right now, but if this situation evolves even further and they do see some kind of economic downturn, this is the time to be thinking about that. While you're doing well, what are the things that we can do if our revenue shifts on us? And this contingency planning process is my time here at SRC, I've seen it help our organization so many times in terms of thinking ahead. Most of the time when we're asking a sales and marketing person to come up with their sales plan, we're saying, give us a 12-month sales plan.
Right.
And they say, okay, I think I can get 15% growth. But we've always now gone, okay, tell me what the next 15% growth is. What if that 15 doesn't come in? What can we replace it with? Now, that's where the innovation comes in.
Right.
Where people have to start thinking outside the box. It also tees them up very well in terms of thinking about the next 1, 2 year, 3 year, 5 year plan. So, often when we talk about this as growth and contingencies, right? You're thinking about all those growth opportunities, how to generate revenue, and then you have to identify from those, what are true contingencies? What are things that we could activate just in the next 6 to 12 months?
Very quickly to respond to a black swan,
right.
For instance.
Some can be activated, some can't, I mean, one of the things, we obviously here at SRC been, drilled into us about planning with contingencies. And, Jack has been talking about this 10-year period for a recession. With Great Game of Business, we went through the 2009, and this business lost 50% like that.
Yep.
And we don't want to go through that anymore. So we've been thinking about and putting in place different things like online learning, virtual learning, a lot of things to kind of prepare for that. Mm-hmm. And that kind of thinking, yeah, maybe you can think of that as a growth opportunity, but that thinking was really driven off the fact that we don't want to go through that period of time anymore. We want to find ways to be able to provide our services, take care of our people. And it comes down to virtual type training. Everybody's trying to jump on that bandwagon now, and we've been working on that. We're able to activate it. We had our first virtual workshop last week, right? So with the workshop, so there's a lot of things that you can do in preparation that helps you in these period of times.
Yeah, and when better times come, staying to that discipline allows you to have an innovation engine because you're constantly coming up with new ideas that could help grow the business. So here's the one that I've been really thinking about, supported by a lot of people out there in the community who've asked the question. We've been hearing you at the gathering every year talk about there's a recession coming. You forecasted a downturn for many years, followed by an oh no upturn. Literally the year by year forecast that you've made has always been followed by there's going to be a dip and then there's going to be an uh-oh. How long will the impact of this pandemic affect the economy?
Oh my God, forgive me for this explanation. Forgive me, okay? I think that most companies, okay, will be up in there and on a path, okay, within 8 to 13 weeks, okay? I think there will be an upturn, all right? I really believe in our medical supply chains. I really believe that once we get a critical number in the United States, we work together to fix it as fast as we can. I definitely think that there's going to be a positive upturn, okay? And it could be 8 to 11 weeks. I hope it isn't 8 to 11 weeks. I hope it's not shorter than that. But we're planning 8 to 13 weeks.
I'm hoping for shorter because this social distancing, I'd rather be much closer to you right now.
Actually, the social distance between you guys is fine. We go further than that. Okay, let me just tell you what I think is going to happen. And I know there's been a lot of questions on the 401ks and things of this nature. And my God, please tell your people to hold on to their 401ks. Don't make any changes, okay? Because there will be a better time. But I think this is my own. Don't hold this against me. I think that a lot of businesses who have been running for the last 10 years that have not cleaned up their balance sheets, that have a lot of bad inventories, a lot of bad buildings, a lot of bad depreciation, a lot of bad debt, that have been building these accruals because of the pressure of publicly held markets. Where you got to, always improve your earnings. Okay, I mean, you're in a market that goes to 29,000, 2,500. Okay, I mean, there's been so much pressure inside of these companies. Okay, what happens in a lot of situations when you find a reason to dump all your hidey holes, okay, you'll dump your hidey holes. Okay, this is terrible for me to sit there and say that some people are going to say, "Thank you, Lord. I've got a virus, I can get rid of it." It is a terrible thing for me to say. I don't want to say that.
But realistic.
But realistic, this is what I'm thinking is going to happen, okay? They're going to be able to clean up their balance sheet. Not going to be able to, they're going to clean up their balance sheet. So even as you suspect the company that you are investing in or looking at had these earnings at this one particular point, and I think you're going to really see a bottoming out. Now, how far is the bottom out? I don't have any idea. I mean, I could work a model out there trying to figure out from 8 to 13 weeks, it's going to be tough, and then it's going to come back, and then the fourth quarter is going to have a spike like that, okay?
Right.
And then I can figure out, okay, what's that adjusted earnings going to be? But the basically thing that's going to happen is I think everyone's just going to have a flush. And then they go back to the first quarter of 2021, you're going to see a spike in the stock market. It's going to go crazy because they're going to say, well, comparatively speaking, quarter to quarter over quarter, this one person's up 100%. In terms of their quarter. So I think that's the mood I think which is going to happen in terms of 401ks and IRAs and anyone that's basically taking a bath in terms of having equities or bonds as an investment. Okay, I just think that you're going to ride this thing out. Don't panic with it. It won't come back as quickly as it will. There will be a very disappointment in terms of everybody announcing how badly the earnings are going to be. You go through that period of time and then bam, okay? Then just get ready for the bam.
Good.
And don't call me if it doesn't work, though. This is what we're using as a model right now.
Jack, thanks for that. Rich, could you sum up kind of, your observations of this discussion and maybe some key takeaways?
Yeah, Jack, what I wanted to do, make sure that the audience knew that we were capturing all of these takeaways, as well as some tips and best practices that a lot of our coaches and practitioners have gathered up, and we're going to share that on Monday as kind of an action guide.
Great.
Okay.
That's a tremendous value to the community.
So what I want to do is just summarize a bit, take some notes. There's a lot to summarize here, by the way. But summarize a bit of this first, and Jack, the first thing I'd say is that, we talked a lot about taking the fear out of the organization. What I heard in terms of that was that it just comes back to good old-fashioned communication, making sure that that's consistent and that's honest, direct communication about what's going on.
Facts. Numbers.
And giving people the feedback on that. A lot of times we feel like the communication is one way, right?
Yeah.
It's a two-way communication for people to really understand. And I think that was something I got from this. The other one that I heard clearly a lot is act now. Get ahead of this as fast as you can. Don't hesitate. Don't get paralyzed.
Take action.
Take action. Talk to your creditors. Talk to your bank.
Delegate your action items, okay?
Yep.
Just don't look there and say that the lady behind the counter doesn't have anything to do, okay?
That's
If you've got an action item, don't think you got to solve that action item. Sit down and explain to someone, call this person, ask them where you're being tested, find out where you can send your people. Just don't sit there and say, oh, man, I can't be tested, or they'll never give us a break in terms of our payables, okay?
Don't assume.
Send people home with work.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You don't have to shoulder this alone as a leader.
Now, you could do a coordinated effort in terms of, what are people gonna do quarantine for 10, 14 days, all right? Go crazy.
Yes. Right. Well, and one message that you sent pretty clearly is communicate to your bankers. So that we need to set some time with us to talk to the
Because
banker.
he's the bank.
He's the bank.
Locked into that one.
Possibly one of the most important things I think we talked about is what we can do whatever we can to retain our people. And
There's no future without your people.
Yeah, there's no future. There's no future. And it's the right thing to do. I mean, this is when, we really get challenged on our values and what we stand for. It's the right thing to do, but it's also the right thing to do for your business, because a lot of people look at this decision to me as a cost decision when it really is an investment decision. As Jack talks about, we see that upturn. If you're coming back with the same people, same experience, same talent, as you go into this upturn, you're going to be in such a better position than everybody else and really have a competitive advantage. So there's a lot of reasons to do that. I know that that's challenging, and we want to share with our community over the next 2 or 3 weeks different ways that you can take care of your people and do that in a way that you don't get to a position that you may have to lay off.
Well, we could be more specific later on, if you want to take this, what we're doing here right now, and you say, I haven't answered the question, or I have this, and I wish I had the opportunity to do that. We'll try to, I think it's a great idea, collect those things. I think your coaches, I think they're really tremendous. They do a good job. They gave us so much to talk about here today. We can run it through them as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The only last one I just want to talk about is that there is no better time to stay disciplined with the practices and principles of the great game of business. We talked about transparency, open and honest communication, financial discipline, thinking forward focused. One that we didn't talk a lot about that I wanted to make sure that our audience can really take advantage of is create wins. You're not going to see the big wins right now. Create the small wins in your organization is a great opportunity. I remember in 2009, one of the best ideas I heard from a practitioner was that he immediately put up what he called a win wall.
The win wall, yeah.
And asked all of his people, I don't care how small the win is, write it down. We want to see all the progress we're making in this organization as we're working through this.
We got a Spotlight Award, where the Spotlight Awards are for those people that recognize their peers that do something special. One of the first things we said is to your awards, okay?
Yeah.
Recognize your peers. Okay, nothing is appreciated more than peer-to-peer recognition. Have a program where, you really see the superstars.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing, we've shared a lot of information that we're getting from our coaches, some practitioner discussions, of course, SRC and Jack, but there's a lot of wisdom of the crowd in, I think, close to 500 registrations that we have. And we want to make sure that information is fed back and give them an opportunity to share with us. So we are on, when we send this action guide on Monday, we're going to ask a question, and I'll give you the question here so all the audience can give some time over the weekend to think about it. But we want that fed back, and then we'll have that up on our website within 24 hours. The responses that we're getting, because there's a lot of good ideas out there, a lot of different things they're doing, and we want to get that fed back. And over the next 2 to 4 weeks, Steve and I will continue to have this webinar session just to answer some of those questions, but also to maybe talk a little bit more deeper in those solutions and help people through this process for sure. So the question we're going to ask to the community is this, and it really goes back to what I think was one of the most important takeaways. So what are you doing to keep your team together during these tough times? So what suggestions do you have for those who are struggling right now to avoid layoffs and keep their people? What are all the creative ideas? Jack talked about, don't wait for the assistance. Find your, do something now that you can do internally to your company. So that's the question we'll throw out there. So I have one last question for you, Jack.
You got 30 seconds.
So, God forbid that SRC has to shut down and Jack Stack himself has to be quarantined to his home for 14 days and you run out of Miller Lite, what are you going to do?
Someone said that if I die when I'm at home, and it won't be because of the virus, okay? That's all I'm saying. If something happens to me, I'm quarantined and I'm at home and I pass away, it is not the virus. That's how I'll answer that question.
You may let us know about where your bunkers are.
Thank you, guys.
So we can come get you.
Thank you for doing
Well,
that.
thank you, Jack. Thank you, Rich. Thanks to all of you for participating. Be sure to answer the question and join us next week at this same time at 11 Central on next Friday. Rich and I will be back to answer more of your questions and share back with you what has happened in the community. Thanks again and take care of yourselves.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.